Batra Daf, Sadi Zayin Amud Aleph, 9 lines down. Tanurabanan. Shemarim Shel Tiruma. If you pour water on Tiruma like sediment, Rishon Vesheni Asur. The first and second times that you pour into the Tiruma to make cups, yani the first and second cups from that sediments, they're also Asur, they're also considered Tiruma. Ushashim Mutar, but the third time is considered Tiruma. Sorry, the third time is not considered Tiruma, and therefore be mutar. Rabbi Meir says, after even the third time is asur if it's still flavored from the Tiruma sediments. V'shel ma'aser, but regarding ma'aser, Rishon asur, the first pouring is asur, sheni mutar, from the second time and on, it is mutar. Rabbi Meir says, even the second time, if there's flavor, it would be asur. V'shel hekdesh, regarding hekdesh, shlishi asur, the third time is asur. Revi'im mutar, the fourth time is mutar. The most strict out of the cases. Rabbi Meir, after reviewing 10 times, he also says Rabbi Meir holds that in the fourth time as well. If it tastes like it, it's still asur. We're going to bring a stira braita. If you pour the water on hekdesh sediments, le'olam asur, it's always asur. B'shel maaser, sheni stuff. Le'olam mutar, it's always mutar. Kasha hekdesh, kasha maaser masher. We have a stira both on maaser and hekdesh. Hekdesh, we said the fourth one would be mutar, and over here it said always asur. And we said maaser, only the first one's asur, and we're saying over here it's always mutar. When I said hekdesh lo kasha, it's not a stira. Kam bek guf in the second braita, in my case that was the actual sediments were hekdesh, and that's why it's always asur. Now, in the first barita where we said it's mutar after a couple of times, after 3 times, it's talking about where the value of it was hekdesh, but not the actual sediments. Maaser stira of maaser is also not a question because why? Kan b'maaser v'dai, kan b'maaser d'mai. In the case where it's automatic, you have to wait a couple of times. Is when it's talking about definitive maaser. In the case where it's automatically asur, it's automatically mutar, rather it's demai, which is safek, and that's why it's mutar. The same way we had these measurements, well, these parameters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times in regarding to isur. Same thing halacha is regarding to make it tameh, right? So certain liquids make things tameh. The Gemara says, what do you mean? The thing makes it tameh. It's eligible to become tameh. If the water by itself is water, and therefore that's already susceptible to tumah. And then if it's wine, also wine has susceptible to tumah. So what are you talking about? It's always susceptible. The Gemara says la. It's not a case where the sediments were not poured water inside, but rather it was rainwater. Rainwater is different because it's not automatically susceptible to tumah because it's not thought about and not prepared as a food/drink. Gemara says v'kibin the kashakil, but if you took the rainwater and poured it into it, that's automatically intention, and therefore shortly becomes tameh. You don't need the 2, 3, 4 times, right? Or turning into wine. The Gemara says no, where it rains directly into it. There is no intention that there until it becomes wine. But if you're taking off the cups one at a time, you're emptying it. That's also actually showing intention. Where I said you're not pouring it out yourself, but rather it's some other case where you are the animals drinking from it. So you're having these pourings without you doing anything because you're not emptying it in between, but rather the cow is basically emptying it for you. Unless you have wine that's good for the mizbeach as a libation. The Gemara says, what are you excluding by saying only wine eligible for mizbeach? Trying to exclude fresh pressed wine, otherwise known as grape juice. But Rabbi Chia says, you should not bring grape juice. If you bring it, kasher, it works. So, kevan the im brehevi kasher, I'm not for the so in regarding to kiddush, that for sure works. So Tamar Rav says that you could squeeze grapes into grapes as wine, grapes into a cup, and you could make that automatically into grape juice. So therefore, what are we talking about? The Gemara says that maybe it's referring to the wine that you take out from the top or the bottom of the barrel, which is not good quality. But Rabbi Chia also says, you shouldn't try not to bring it from those locations. But if you did bring it, it's kasher. But the Mautes, well, maybe it excludes something else. Yeah, in Kushi, black wine, Borek, white wine. Hiliston is a certain type of sun sweetened wine. Shalmartef wine from a cellar, which is Safek good wine. Shatzimukim wine made from raisins. Maybe excluding that, the Gemara says, that as well says you should not, but the avad you should not bring it. But if you do bring it, it works. So what are we talking about? Maybe you're trying to exclude yain koses, wine that's turning sour, mazug or diluted wine, meguleh, uncovered wine, or wine produced from sediments, or bad smelling wine. The Tanakh Berurah says, "You should not bring it in pasul. If you bring it to pasul." Right, so one second. So what is Rav teaching you with the halacha? To exclude what? Because you're trying to exclude souring wine. Took the Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. We read my halakha earlier yesterday regarding Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi and Rabbi Yochanan, whether that's good. Excluding diluted wine. That's not true. Allah, we actually want diluted wine for kiddush. You're supposed to dilute the wine because back then they made fresh, heavy wine, and the alcohol content was like 1,000, and therefore you have to dilute it. So, you're trying to exclude uncovered wine. That's not true. Sakanahi, that's dangerous uncovered wine, because uncovered wine back then they used to be choshesh. They used to suspect that there would be a snake putting poison into it. So if you're trying to exclude sediment wine, if in case where he poured 3 cups of water and then 4 cups of liquid came out, that's straight up wine. He poured 3 cups and 3.5 cups came out. That's Rabbanan Chachamim and Acharim rather, what we had. Maybe you're trying to exclude bad smelling wine. Be excluding uncovered wine. Even if you pass it through a strainer, which can strain out the venom, even that would be asur. Says, even so, we should not use it because the pasuk says, you shouldn't. The same way you wouldn't bring a inferior gift to like the governor or president of your country, so too you shouldn't bring to Hashem bad stuff, even if you fix it. Hamar Hivarahu, what's the halacha regarding white wine for Mizbeach? Amar Lei answered him back, Al Tera Yain Ki Adem, you should basically the pasuk teaching you should ruse red. Tankanim Mishnah, the Mishnah mentioned that if you bought kegs, you accept yourselves 10 out of 100 being bad. Tana Batra says, Pestasot, the bad kegs that we mentioned, Naot Gufarot. It's referring to they were resealed, meaning they had cases where the wine that the barrels would break, you can't hand broken barrels because broken barrels can actively get soured. But if you hand them wine barrels that were fixed, that's okay. Someone sells wine to his friend, and it became sour. You're not responsible for the loss. But if you know that it was always sour, this guy's product sours every year, it's a sale, it's an error sale, and therefore you have to get a refund. But sell it to the buyer. Yain Amurad. Mebusam ani mochelach. I'm selling you flavor wine. It'll be good, very good wine, very good quality. That wine has to last, and he has to continue supplying him wine until Shavuot. V'yain mishel ishtaked. If he's selling him quote old wine, that wine has to be at least 1 year old. And if it's aged wine, it has to be wine that is 3 years old. Okay. The case that we mentioned earlier is the seller's responsible, the wine spoils, only if it's in the barrel of the buyer. But it's still in the seller's barrel. The buyer can tell him, here's your wine, here's your keg, you gave me bad product, refund. So if it's the wine in the barrels of the seller, what's the difference? The seller should tell him, look, you shouldn't have waited. You obviously waited, and therefore it's your problem. Gemara says, no. What did he say? He told him, no, I sold you wine for cooking. And therefore, the seller has to make sure that you give wine that can be used for a long period of time, like I mentioned earlier, because cooking wine is meant to be used over a longer period of time. So, if that's the case, anyway, why is Rabbi Yossi saying the Mishnah is only referring to a case of wine that was in the barrels of the buyer? He said only in the case where it was cooking wine. Look, maybe say regular case, but seller's barrel. And not cooking wine. Much simpler. Where it says, oh, no, the Mishnah was otherwise did not make sense. The kind of Brisa says, if it's known that the guy's wine always turns sour, how does it make a refund, automatic refund? Why is the case the guy could have told him that he shouldn't have waited. We have to establish the case. That if the Mishnah talking about a case that the buyer told him that it's for cooking, Shema Mina, it must be referring to that case. Meaning, if the Mishnah was referring to talking about cooking wine, then he'd be patur. So we see from the fact that if it was meant for cooking in the case where he transferred it over, that's why he's patur. And that's why they established the case of cooking. But he argues against Rabbi Chiya by Yosef. Because he says, Hamrad mazlat de garim. We had it earlier. We had earlier that when wine spoils, we don't blame the seller, but rather it's whoever has the wine in possession. It's your mazal. Is a guy who's arrogant. I feel like even his wife will make fun of him. As the pasuk says, Yahir an arrogant man will not last. My loin there was, I mean, big benaveshlo. Not even his own house to be respected. Someone who's haughty. Another halacha. Whoever wears the cloak of a Talmid Chacham, I mentioned a month ago that means like a long cloak that they used to wear. And nowadays I don't wear the golden navy garment of the chief rabbi of Israel. Don't use that tunic. If he's wearing it and he's not Talmid Chacham, he will not be admitted into the enclosure of Hashem in the next world. We learn from there that person should not make believe he's Talmid Chacham if he's not.